It's very difficult to hold a note, have it be straight tone, and it not go flat. As you go up in your voice, usually, well, it's one of three things. One, your larynx rises, but that's less common. And that's what usually less experienced singers do, is they'll let their larynx rise. But there's ways to do it, like she's actually doing it right here. Not there. On the higher note, she tilts, and I'll explain that in a second. So, the way that we get vibrato, people say that, oh, if you don't have tension, vibrato comes in naturally. That's actually not what happens. What happens with vibrato is introduced when you tilt the thyroid cartilage. Thyroid cartilage is like your Adam's apple. And when it tilts, what it does is it stretches out the folds and it elongates your vocal tract. And by elongating the vocal tract, you get richer, deeper tones in the same way you would when you pull up a trombone, like that. And then what causes vibrato is the lack of stability. So there's this oscillation because the muscles responsible for tilting the thyroid cartilage are not that strong. So they'll kind of get this little flow. And that's what creates vibrato. So anytime you tilt, you're going to have vibrato unless you sing with tension, then you're going to go flat and it's going to sound bad. So she's using very, 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 very gentle air, triple underline very, very gentle air, to be able to raise her larynx and sing comfortably. And then at the end of the phrase, she's bringing in her thyroid cartilage tilt to warm up and give a little bit more vibrato, a little bit more warmth. But I also want to point out, you can have a range of motion in how much you tilt. So listen to that, because that's also part of this equation. So right off the bat, we got a lot going on. Lovely. The things you can do when you have a microphone. Pop singing is deceptive a lot of times. When you listen to it, it's really hard to tell that sometimes people are being very, very quiet, and sometimes they're being actually kind of loud. And what allows for that is what's called a compressor. And this is really important if you want to do pop singing. You have to understand the effects of compression, because pop singing has a ton on it. And the reason it has a ton on it is because it allows you to do a couple of things. So if I have like let me put on my compressor as high as it goes. This is max compression. So I'm going to sing very quietly. And that's going to be just about as loud as and so why a lot of people say, why would you compress that much? It ruins your dynamic range. Well, what it allows you to do is it allows you to play with tone and timbre and sound. So in the beginning of this, you bet your bunions, I don't know what bunions are, but you bet them that this is loud, or at least louder. That's a little bit more of like a classical sound. It's not as quiet as what she does next. She's like whispering. But what we hear, because of the compressor, what we hear is a change in tone and timbre, not dynamic. So old school audio engineers always poo-poo on overcompression, but if you do it on vocals, you can get some really cool stuff. That's so hard to do. The whole raised larynx thing, to get these tones, it does have to be done softly. But it's also hard not to choke off your sound. This is why most inexperienced singers are always raising their larynx. But a good singer who knows how to do it can get this ethereal kind of effect. And it's important to mention here, I mentioned this in the last video, but that breathy sound is actually not that breathy. This is another post-production trick. This is a boosting of 10K hertz and above. It's a very common technique with vocals. You can hear it. I'm going to kill 10K entirely, so see how I'm like muted? And then I'm going to raise it up. You hear how that sizzle came in a really dramatic way? That's what's happening right here. It makes the singer sound closer. Lovely. Sustaining a note on this raised larynx thing is really tough, so she doesn't. She just kind of pops it, and then goes into the tilt to make it lovely. Right? You can hear the beginning of vibrato there, and then she cuts it off because she doesn't want it. Right? Great. And then she brings it in on the refrain of the phrase, I'm sorry, dog hair. Gross. My dog sheds. I love it. 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 She's playing with those vowels hardcore. When you open your mouth a lot, if you go up with it, it's not so great. Because you're relying on making space as you go up by opening your mouth, and there's a really hard limit to that, and it usually doesn't provide the greatest sound. But you can use that to make like a sassy sound. Give it a little bite. Da, da, right? Don't freak out on me, dog. That's how you know you sound bad, is when your dog freaks out. See what I'm saying? That little bite, just a subtle little effect. Lovely. So remember when I said that, like, how she kind of cut it off before the vibrato kicked in? Another example of that. I'm not sure, there's got to be a conductor or something, because everyone just cut off on that. Whew. What's happening here and what happens in classical music or like opera and a few other genres, time is not treated as absolute. Any song, any music that is a derivative of dance or builds off of dance usually has very, very strong and strict meter, which has a certain effect. And you can play with those effects, like Michael Jackson. You know, Billie Jean is not my, you know what I mean? Like, very percussive, very on the beat. But when you have music like this, time becomes like taffy. You can push it, you can pull it, and you can play with it. But what becomes difficult is when you have a lot of people doing it. That's why we have conductors in classical music. So I'm betting there's a conductor here, or everyone's just magically going to cut off at the same time, which, I mean, I've seen happen, but it ain't common. Yeah, I didn't see that coming. She has a lot of bite to her voice and power now. There's a lot going on to create that. I'm going to see how much of it I can get. That's reinforced falsetto. All right, before anyone gets mad at me about me calling a great high note falsetto of any kind, let's actually dig into what falsetto is. Okay, so the pure falsetto, just falsetto straight up, is when the folds flip like that and you get a flute-like sound. It's very airy like that. Reinforced falsetto is different because there's this whole range of motion here. Some of your folds can be flipped while other pieces of it are connected. This is usually what head voice is, or mixed, or going into the top in general. You can then add additional power with a lot brighter vowels on the top. Like that. It's hard to maneuver around doing that it's really hard to kind of move when you're doing that, and she ain't having that hard of a time doing that, which is really cool. Oh, I'm gonna nerd out even more. Hold on, I want to pause right when I see it. Come on, stop blurring on me. This is probably the clearest I can get. She is jutting her chin forward, but it's on purpose. When you tilt your head up, the cricoid cartilage can tilt easier, and that's responsible for some of that belt hardcore sound. But also, it allows your larynx to raise a little bit, which can help you navigate when you're up that high. Additionally, her soft palate is not visible from that position. It is up like crazy, which you need whenever you go up high. There's so much space going on inside of her mouth. It is very tempting to look at that as an amateur and say, oh, to get up high, I just need to go, ah. But that's not the only part of this recipe. There's a lot going on. And I wish I could get a clear shot of that. And then right back into, as she goes into the lower range, she's contrasting vowels from ah to ah. And it ties off the phrase. It gives it this whoosh. Because remember, we have incredible amounts of compression on. So we can't use dynamics to phrase. We have to use frequencies. And how do we change frequencies when we sing? We change vowels. And those are also wonderful round vowels there to, again, kind of tie off that incredible thing that she just did. Wonderful from falsetto downwards. So I want to point out that the second the drums kick in, and this is really cool, and it requires a lot of versatility from the artist. People always make fun of pop or pop classical crossover. Screw them. Like, I think it's awesome. And it's wonderful because it ties two very different things together that don't ordinarily go together. The pulling time, like taffy, it goes away the second you introduce a drum kit. But the fact that both of those elements can exist in one song, I think is what makes this so compelling. And she works with that. You get an opera singer in there who's never done that before. She can't do it like that. Or he, or whoever you put in there who only has a classical background, will not use consonants the way that she is using consonants right now. Pay attention to this. It's cool. It's so in time. It's ludicrous. When consonants become expressive, I get a little misty. I get a little, yeah. That sounds, it was supposed to be like an excited thing, and then it ended just sounded creepy. So, I don't, But you get what I'm saying. It's cool. If you were to do that on your own, again, keep in mind how much compression we have on this. If you were to do that on your own, it sounds super disconnected. The second you bring in that compression, it doesn't. I even like the saxophone. Hate me all you want, but I'm a George Michael's fan. That is a great shot. That is a great shot. It takes people years to learn to make space on high notes. It is a really difficult thing to do. You can't just open your mouth. The tongue has to be forward so that there's open space in your throat. People don't, if you have a shot of the throat from the side, from a side profile, and you have like an MRI, Singing in the MRI, by the way, lovely YouTube channel, and you can see all of this. The tongue has to be super, super duper forward to create space in the throat. And you can tell, like, just, I'm going to maximize it for a second so you can get a better shot of this. There we go. This whole thing that's happening right here, there's so much space with the soft palate. To feel your soft palate, just do an inhale K. And what you'll feel is your soft palate kind of like popping up. And that's how you make the sound. There are three muscles in the that lift the soft palate. You can lift it vertically, you can lift it to the left, and you can lift it to the right. You have to do it all when you go that high. And it takes a very, very long time. It's really, really difficult. And then using her torso to create, her mouth is wide when she's up there. She can't have her consonants to bring rhythm to life. So she jerks her torso around to achieve that effect. Yeah, I'm right there with you, guy. That's the face I want to have right now. That is a perfect shot of it. This is what I'm going to freeze on. That you can actually see her uvula. And now we're getting kind of weird super voice nerd, but bear with me. You see that? You see that? That's boom. Boom. No room for tonsils in there. That is open. Open throat right there. That is incredible. I forgot one very important element of this is that you have to have very, very, very little air as well. And so it's not just a mastery of what you're doing here. You also have to have a mastery of your breath. So just, you know, so people don't go like, ah, all day and think they're going to hit a high note. Beautiful. Whew. That's something else.